Hello, we're about halfway through chapter 4 on page 64 of The Dinosaur Discovery by Laura James. A young dinosaur, I think, said Diamond. Where on earth did you find it? Underneath a bandstand in Pageant Gardens. I was chasing a mouse. Incredible, said Diamond. Thanks, replied Bob. I'm usually quite good at chasing things, but this one got away. Bob realized this wasn't really what Diamond had meant. Were there any more bones? She asked. Yes, we found a whole skeleton, Bob informed her. It's top secret until Gizmo breaks the story in the Daily Bark. I've met Gizmo, said Diamond. He told me all about your newspaper. We call ourselves the News Hounds, Bob said proudly. I'm the travel correspondent. I must tell Gizmo about this new development. He'll be really impressed. I'll make sure you get a mention. Just then, Bob and Diamond felt a shadow fall over them. It was Mr. Marcus. Colin was waiting for Bob by the door. Come on, we need to get back in time for the 4:15, Colin reminded him. Bob followed his master, giving a shy wag of his tail as a goodbye to Diamond. As soon as they'd left, Mr. Marcus rubbed his hands together. He loved making a sail. Then, looking down at Diamond in disgust, he shouted, You're getting in the way again. He shooed her off to her basket. She avoided his boot and slunk away, but she didn't have a chance to hide the book and the bone. Mr. Marcus spied them, and Diamond's heart sank. His expression changed as he glanced over the pages. He reached for his phone, and his words filled Diamond with dread. Hello, is this the museum? Chapter 5. Bob was thrilled to see his picture in the Daily Bark the following morning. He felt a bit like a celebrity. He'd managed to tell Gizmo of Diamond's dinosaur discovery just before the paper went to print. He hoped Diamond would be really happy to see her name in the newspaper. He tucked his copy of the paper under his blanket and went off to check if Colin had changed the signals correctly. Diamond was on her usual train, and Bob dashed over to see her. Did you see the paper? You got a mention, he blurted out. Mr. Marcus was pulling Diamond on her leash, and Bob was having difficulty keeping up. He knows, Diamond said under her breath. Who knows? Who knows what? Asked Bob, a little confused. He'd expected Diamond to be happier than this. Mr. Marcus knows it's a dinosaur bone. He's going to sell it, and the museum wants to know where he found it. But he doesn't know where we found it, replied Bob. He's stopped feeding me in the hope I'll lead him to the bones, she whined as Mr. Marcus dragged her over the tracks. The barriers fell just as Bob was about to follow her. Poor Diamond, he thought. As he sat waiting for the barriers to lift again, he decided he'd have to tell Gizmo. Bob raced to the Daily Bark's headquarters, a.k.a. Gizmo's house, and was relieved to see both Gizmo and Jilly were there. It had been quite a run, but in between pants, Bob explained everything. I know, I shouldn't have taken that bone to the curiosity shop, said Bob, shamefaced. But if you hadn't, Jilly pointed out, we wouldn't have found out it was a dinosaur bone. No use crying over spilled kibble, said Gizmo. What we have to do now is move the skeleton. Bob, get back to the shop and make sure Mr. Marcus stays inside until we're done. So as Jilly and Gizmo sprang into action, Bob ran for the curiosity shop with one of his favorite treats. It was nearly dark when Bob peeped through the window. Diamond was lying sadly in her basket. He whined a high-pitched kind of whine that only dog ears can pick up. Diamond jumped to her feet and opened the door just enough to let him through, but not so much that the shop doorbell would ring. I brought you something to eat, he told her, placing the treat at her feet. Oh, thank you, said Diamond, wolfing it down without really chewing. Jilly and Gizmo have gone to move the skeleton, Bob told her. Diamond nearly choked on the last bit of treat. Oh no, she gasped. Mr. Marcus is getting ready to go skeleton hunting right now. What if he sees them? I've heard him on the phone to the museum. If he finds the whole skeleton, they've promised him lots of money. Then he'll leave Puddle and take me with him. You can't leave Puddle, said Bob. You only just got here. For a moment, Diamond looked as if she might howl in misery, but then a look of steely resolve came into her sparkly eyes. "We can slow him down," she said. She whispered her plan in Bob's ear. A moment later, Mr. Marcus walked into the dark shop, ready for his dinosaur hunt. At a nod from Diamond, Bob darted behind a bookcase and then scrambled onto an old chair. On top of the bookcase was a chair. On top of the bookcase was a record player. He set it playing at full volume. "What? Who's there?" Mr. Marcus shouted, waving his arms around in the dark. Then Diamond climbed into an old rain poncho and ran toward him. Bob, enjoying the game very much, then stuck his head into a stuffed stag's head and did a dance on top of the bookshelf. Mr. Marcus shouted in fear and ran for the door, but the two dogs stopped him in his tracks. Diamond had climbed into an old diving suit. Mr. Marcus was terrified. He cowered behind the shop counter. Diamond and Bob were an excellent double act, and things were going really well until Mr. Marcus unexpectedly lunged forward. He caught hold of Bob's tail and put him in an antique birdcage, complete with stuffed parrot. Diamond, dashing to his rescue, was cornered. Mr. Marcus managed to grab hold of her collar and tie her to a rocking horse. They were trapped. And I think we'll do a new video for chapter 6, so see you soon.